So imagine going to your doctor because your body is just, well, it's just failing, you know?
Right.
You're dealing with chronic insomnia, maybe your resting heart rate is constantly elevated,
Right.
and you're like catching every single cold that goes around because your immune system is totally shot. Plus, you have this pervasive, heavy brain fog.
Yeah, and your doctor probably runs tests, maybe prescribes some medication, and just sends you home to rest.
Exactly. But what if the actual root cause medical emergency isn't a virus or some clinical syndrome at all? I mean, what if the literal hazard to your health is the person sitting right across from you at your own kitchen table?
It's a terrifying paradigm shift, honestly. We are so conditioned to view relationship struggles strictly through this lens of like emotional compatibility or communication issues.
Right.
We very rarely consider that another human being's behavioral pathology could act as a direct physical pathogen to our own bodies.
And that is exactly why today's deep dive feels so incredibly critical. Usually, when we talk about a toxic dynamic, we fall back on comfortable pop psychology.
Oh, absolutely.
We talk about attachment wounds, love languages, or, embarking on a healing journey. It's comfortable chatter because it keeps everything in the realm of manageable, mutual self-improvement.
Yeah, it feels safe.
But today, our mission is to cut completely through that noise. We are looking at a deeply sobering, intensely practical ebook by the Joe Chris called The Danger Nobody Talks About. And it does not care about your healing journey.
No, it really doesn't.
It focuses entirely on the raw, documented physical and existential threats that severe narcissistic relationships actually pose.
And the author makes a really compelling argument here that society actively avoids looking at the hospital visits, the financial ruin, and just the sheer existential destruction these dynamics cause.
Because it's too much.
Exactly. It's deemed too dark or too disturbing. But the guiding philosophy of this material is that information is not anxiety. Information is armor.
I love that. Information is armor.
Right. Because by refusing to name the actual dangers, we strip people of their ability to prepare for them.
Yeah. So let's frame this before we really get into the weeds today. Analyzing the emotional dynamics of a truly dangerous relationship without addressing the physical danger is it's like analyzing the structural integrity and the paint color of a house while it is currently engulfed in flames.
That is a perfect analogy.
We have to stop talking about the paint. We need to focus on the fire. And the source material breaks these fires down into specific categorized threats so that the invisible finally becomes visible.
And the necessity of naming these threats, I mean, it really cannot be overstated. A named danger is the logistical problem you can actually plan for and outmaneuver.
Right.
An unnamed danger is just this ambient terror that you can only endure. So the first step is always mapping the terrain, starting with the internal landscape.
Let's start right there with what the material describes as the invisible collapse. Before a person even faces external threats like financial ruin or physical escalation, we have to understand the silent internal demolition they endure first.
Yeah, the internal breakdown.
The text outlines this deeply insidious mechanism of sustained gaslighting, isolation, and contempt. And it's not just a bad mood, it is a systematic process of removing a person's fundamental connection to reality, which leads directly to clinical depression and, tragically, suicidal ideation.
To understand how that collapse happens, you really have to look at the underlying mechanics of human stability. We all rely on a few core pillars to stay grounded.
Okay, what are those?
So first, you have trust in your own perception, your ability to know what you saw and heard. Second, you have a support system, like people who can validate your reality.
Right.
Third is your core self-worth. And fourth, your belief that the future can improve. What happens in this dynamic is a methodical dismantling of all four of those pillars.
Wow. So the abuser denies your reality until you doubt your own memory. They isolate you from friends who might, point out the crazy behavior, and they devalue you to crush your self-esteem.
Exactly. And then they trap you in a cycle of false hope and immediate punishment. When you systematically strip those pillars away, the victim isn't just sad. They are left in a documented psychological state of total reality distortion.
That is so heavy.
It is. And this brings us to a chilling concept in the text regarding the malignant version of this pattern. In a malignant narcissistic dynamic, The abuser lacks an internal stop mechanism.
Wait, hold on. I need to understand that because most people, even if they are angry or really toxic, would eventually see their partner literally deteriorating, like losing weight, crying on the floor, barely able to function, and some
Yeah.
instinct would kick in. They'd think, oh my God, I went too far. I need to back off.
That is the empathy reflex.
Hmm.
And it is precisely what is missing here. The malignant narcissist does not register that line.
Really?
In fact, it's much darker. They actually view the psychological and physical deterioration of their partner as supply. Yeah. They derive a sense of omnipotence and control from watching the breakdown. The fact that they can cause such a profound effect on another human being feeds their ego. The destruction isn't an unfortunate side effect. It is the actual goal.
But wait, I want to make sure we are drawing the line clearly here because people have toxic breakups all the time. People get stressed, they cry, they lose sleep over bad relationships. Why does the author elevate this specific dynamic to the level of a literal medical emergency? I mean, that sounds almost like an exaggeration.
It sounds like hyperbole until you look at the biology.
Okay.
The answer is entirely physiological.
Well-
The text explains that the nervous system of someone living in this dynamic has been running on emergency protocols like literally flooding the body with cortisol and adrenaline, not for a few hours, but for months or even years.
Yes.
To use an analogy, imagine taking your car out on the highway, throwing it into second gear, and redlining the engine at 8,000 RPM for 10,000 miles without an oil change.
I mean, the gears are just going to melt. The engine will literally tear itself apart.
Exactly. And the same principle applies to your body. Living in an environment where you are constantly anticipating the next verbal attack, the next gaslighting session, the next rage episode, it is physiologically identical to living in a sustained combat zone.
Wow.
The body cannot run those emergency protocols indefinitely without severe collateral damage.
And the source documents these physical consequences so clearly. We are talking about cardiovascular issues like severe hypertension, immune suppression that leaves you constantly sick or vulnerable to long-term autoimmune flare-ups,
Yeah.
endocrine disruption, gastrointestinal collapse, and chronic debilitating insomnia. Because, of course, the brain refuses to sleep when it believes a predator is in the room.
The fundamental takeaway here is that your body is the most honest reporter in the room.
Yeah.
It does not gaslight you. It does not rationalize bad behavior.
Right, it just keeps score.
It keeps a literal physical ledger of every threat. The symptoms you are experiencing are not small complaints to push through. They are medical evidence that your environment is hostile to your biological survival.
So if your body is literally breaking down from cortisol overload and your internal defenses are just completely worn out, the danger begins to mutate. It shifts from invisible internal damage to fiercely physical external danger.
Yes, the escalation.
And this usually happens when the narcissist's carefully curated public facade is threatened, right?
This transition is a critical flashpoint. Many individuals with these traits manage to keep their rage below the threshold of outright physical violence most of the time.
Because of their image.
Exactly. Because their public image, the illusion that they are a perfect partner, a pillar of the community, matters more to them than anything else. The social breaks hold. But the source material warns us about specific conditions where those breaks simply evaporate.
The text highlights moments of catastrophic threat to their ego, like when their facade is publicly exposed, or when a partner finally attempts to leave, or when there's a complete, undeniable loss of control over the narrative.
In those specific moments, the person in front of them ceases to be a human being with rights.
That's terrifying.
Through the lens of the pathology, the partner becomes a malfunctioning object, a possession that has rebelled and is now threatening the abuser's survival by threatening their ego. Because that core lack of empathy was always there beneath the surface, when the social breaks fail, there is nothing internally to stop physical escalation.
Which leads to a massive warning in the text that feels so urgent. The author explicitly states that the leaving and returning cycle is statistically the most dangerous place a person can be.
It is a terrifying reality. People caught in that cycle are particularly at risk because every single time you return, the rage upon reunion is more intense.
Why is that?
The abuser's sense of grievance deepens. You embarrass them by leaving, and now they need to punish you to reestablish dominance. Their tolerance for escalation widens. The text is unambiguous. If they have crossed the threshold into physical intimidation once, the pattern does not reverse. It only moves in one direction.
But here is the element that genuinely stopped me in my tracks. The author points out a danger that completely redefines what we think of as physical abuse. The abuser doesn't even have to raise a hand to be physically dangerous.
Right.
It manifests as a total reckless disregard for your physical safety.
It is perhaps the most insidious threat because it often flies under the radar of what we classify as violence. We're talking about a reckless, callous disregard for your physical well-being in everyday situations where they hold some level of responsibility or control.
The best way to visualize this, and the text uses this specific example, is being trapped in the passenger seat of a car where the driver suddenly decides the laws of physics and the rules of the road simply do not apply to them anymore.
Yes, the driving thing.
You are a captive in a multi-ton machine, they are furious, and they start driving erratically at excessive speeds just to terrify you.
Using a vehicle as a tool of intimidation is shockingly common in these dynamics. It might also involve driving under the influence with you or your children in the car.
Unbelievable.
It's framed as just drama or an argument that got out of hand. But in reality, your physical life is in direct jeopardy because someone is choosing to weaponize a machine.
And the carelessness extends to medical needs, too. It manifests as actively dismissing severe medical symptoms, telling you you're being dramatic, you don't need an ambulance when you are in acute pain.
Or withholding necessary medication.
Yeah. By draining the bank account so you can't afford it, the total lack of empathy isn't just an emotional bummer, it becomes a literal, immediate physical hazard.
This brings up a foundational point about rights. You are entitled to safe transportation. You're entitled to immediate medical care. These are not privileges granted by a partner. They are fundamental, non-negotiable human rights.
Absolutely.
When someone interferes with them, it ceases to be a relationship problem. It is a safety crisis.
So let's say a person recognizes all of this. They feel their body failing, they see the physical recklessness, they realize the house is on fire, and they decide to pack a bag and leave. The obvious question is, why is it so hard to just walk out the door?
Well, that exposes the next layer of the trap.
Right. If you try to escape, you trigger the scorched earth strategy.
When malignant narcissists face the reality of separation, they rarely just walk away. They frequently deploy a highly calculated strategy to strip the other person of the material foundation of their life. It is the total destruction of basic resources.
We are talking about financial and legal weaponization, hiding or draining joint assets months before the separation even happens, falsifying documents to drag out court proceedings for years.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
And the most heartbreaking tactic, weaponizing custody battles. Not because they genuinely want to care for the children, but because the children are the ultimate leverage to maintain control and inflict maximum pain.
To understand the mechanism here, you have to look at the motive. Why do they do this? The narcissist is not just being petty.
Right.
By systematically stripping your financial resources, destroying your credit, and tying you up in endless litigation, they are neutralizing the threat of your independence. If you have no money, no home, and no energy, you cannot sustain your escape.
It's a trap.
It is a calculated multi-year siege designed specifically to exhaust your capacity to exist independently.
That is just brutal. But the tactic that feels the most psychologically devastating is what the author calls the social death campaign, the smear campaign. Because this doesn't happen in the aftermath of a messy breakup. It is a preemptive strike. It starts before you even leave.
It is a meticulously planned environmental manipulation. By the time you actually pack your bags, the social landscape has already been entirely prepared.
Wow.
The abuser has spent months positioning you as the problem, the difficult partner, the unstable one who is losing their grip.
And it's done so covertly. It's not them running around yelling that you're crazy. It's done through subtle, strategic little disclosures to your mutual friends, always disguised as deep concern.
Oh, always concern.
They'll pull your best friend aside and say, I'm just so worried about her lately. Her memory seems to be slipping. Or, he's been acting so erratically. I'm trying my best to hold things together. I just needed to confide in someone. It plants a tiny seed of doubt.
So when the explosion finally happens and you desperately reach out to your community for help, the ground has already shifted beneath your feet.
Because they've already been prepped.
Exactly.
Right.
People are hesitant, they are cautious, they've already internalized a twisted narrative where you are the aggressor or the mentally unstable one. You discover that your support system has been dismantled before you even realized you were under attack.
How do you possibly fight a preemptive strike when you don't even know what's happening? It sounds impossible.
The author provides a brilliant countermeasure here. You have to build your safety net in the dark.
Okay, what does that mean?
You must invest in relationships entirely outside of the abuser's orbit immediately. Reconnect with old friends, professional mentors, family members who know your character independently of your relationship.
You're right.
You don't even need to tell them the details of the abuse yet. You just need to maintain your presence in reality with people who are immune to this smear campaign.
Meaning mutual friends are likely going to be collateral damage, and you just have to mourn that and let it go.
Precisely. On a practical level, building in the dark also means securing your material reality. You make quiet copies of essential documents, passports, birth certificates, financial records, property deeds.
You don't wait.
No, you move them to a secure location, like a safe deposit box or a trusted family member's house, before you ever announce your intention to leave. You protect your assets before the crisis hits, because once the narcissist knows you are leaving, the scorched earth campaign begins instantly.
Okay, we have mapped out a terrifying terrain. The physiological breakdown, the escalating physical hazards, the scorched earth destruction of your resources. It can feel completely paralyzing.
It can.
So how does the author actually suggest a person navigates this and survives?
This is where the source material transitions from a sobering diagnosis to a deeply tactical survival guide. The author introduces the concept of triage.
Like in a hospital.
Exactly. Instead of trying to fix a complex relationship, you treat the situation exactly like a multi-casualty medical crisis.
Yeah.
In a medical emergency, you don't treat a broken finger while the patient is actively bleeding out. You address the most immediate threat first, in a strict, ruthless order.
The book breaks this down beautifully. Level 1 is an immediate safety threat. If there is physical violence, suicidal ideation, or an acute medical emergency, you do not analyze the relationship dynamics.
Never.
You call emergency services or go to the ER, full stop. No preparation or planning needed.
Once level 1 is handled, you look at level 2, which is ongoing physical or resource risk. This requires a logistical safety plan, securing documents, and maybe getting a burner phone.
Right.
But level 3 is the one that most people completely overlook, and it is the psychological and physiological health crisis.
This part is so crucial. If your body is failing, if you have that chronic insomnia, the racing heart, the brain fog, the text argues that you cannot simply think your way out of the fog.
No, you can't.
You actually need to go to a medical doctor, explain that you are experiencing severe, acute stress, and stabilize your physical chemistry first.
You cannot make strategic, life-altering decisions from inside a neurological crisis. The amygdala is screaming, the prefrontal cortex is offline. The author advises that you literally put all the emotional questions about the relationship into a mental box for at least 6 months.
Put who said what, who is right, and whether they ever really loved you into a sealed box.
You seal the box and put it on a shelf. You wait until the cortisol drops. You wait until you have slept through the night for a month.
Wow.
Once the fog lifts and your nervous system downregulates, then you can open the box and look at the relationship questions clearly. Until then, you operate purely on logistics.
Because the exit plan isn't about feeling emotionally ready to say goodbye. The author states it with such perfect clarity. The goal is not to leave perfectly, it's to leave safely.
It is an operational mandate. Opening an independent bank account with enough cash for 2 weeks of survival. Securing a tangible answer to the question, where will I sleep tomorrow night? Consulting a lawyer independently to understand your rights before the money is hidden.
Right.
It strips away the emotional paralysis that keeps victims trapped and replaces it with concrete, manageable tasks.
I was looking at the back of this ebook, and I was genuinely surprised by how clinical and actionable the appendices are. It's not just vague encouragement, it provides literal protocol.
Oh, they're highly specific.
For instance, there is a 9-round EFT tapping protocol. And for those who haven't encountered it, EFT, or emotional freedom techniques, is a somatic practice where you literally tap on specific acupressure points on your body to send calming signals to the amygdala in your brain.
What is fascinating about how the author utilizes it here is the strict boundary placed around it.
Yeah.
This specific protocol is uniquely designed not for processing deep childhood trauma or analyzing emotional wounds. It is strictly for physiological stabilization.
Right. It's a physical tool to act as a circuit breaker for your nervous system's emergency response. It just gives your body permission to pause the adrenaline dump so you can breathe and actually execute your exit plan.
It acknowledges the massive biological load you are carrying. It validates that the threat in your environment is real, but provides a mechanism to artificially settle the nervous system just enough to function.
And then there are the one-on-one reprogramming questions. The instruction is very firm. These are meant to be used only after you are physically stable and safe, not during an acute crisis.
Well, that's an important boundary there.
But looking through them, it's like a guided, systematic roadmap to untangling the years of gaslighting. It forces you to write down your actual reality and reclaim your perception.
They take the abstract, overwhelming fog of psychological abuse and turn it into a step-by-step process of cognitive realignment. It is a highly structured framework for regaining your autonomy and your sanity.
Having that kind of step-by-step structure when your brain feels like scrambled eggs must be an absolute lifesaver.
Totally.
If we pull all of this together, the core message of this material is profoundly validating. It cuts through the noise and tells the reader something they desperately need to hear. You are not imagining it.
The symptoms in your body are real. The danger in your environment is real. The expert consensus of this text is that your right to a life that does not systematically cost you your health, your material resources, and your will to live is absolute.
Yeah,
It is a non-negotiable baseline for human existence.
non-negotiable. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We've talked about the house being on fire, the physiological toll, and the ruthless tactics of the Scorched Earth campaign. But take a moment to imagine a different reality.
Okay.
What would your daily life actually look like, and what behaviors would you stop tolerating right this minute if you gave yourself complete, unapologetic permission to hold your own physical safety and survival as your absolute primary priority without any qualification or guilt?
Operating from that premise changes the entire paradigm. It removes the confusion and clarifies exactly what needs to be done.
To get a closer look at that 9-round physiological stabilization EFT tapping protocol, the logistical safety planning worksheets, and those 101 reprogramming questions we discussed, make sure to read the description for more details about the tools and techniques mentioned in today's deep dive.